Welcome to the Union County Citizens Forum. We crazy citizens here went to the Union County Freeholder meeting tonight. It is crazy. What is today's date? So
15th of September.
Crazy, I can never
Thursday,
remember the date.
15th of September.
Thursday the 15th. We're going to leave the format tonight. Instead of going through the agenda, we've outlined 4 topics that we would like to bring your attention to, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to turn it over to this crazy guy here.
Yeah, we got, the main thing that happened in this meeting was UCUA Covanta deal being approved by the county, new debt coming on, and it really is fascinating, and this is what happened. It's a little long, but try to stick with it. This is what went down, then we'll discuss it later.
Good evening, Chairwoman Scanlon, ladies and gentlemen of the Freeholder Board. Bruce Patterson, Garwood, New Jersey. I guess let's jump in. Mr. Barry, the Freeholder Council, mentioned about the clarification in the 3rd paragraph where the revenue sharing will cover all debt outstanding in the last 5 years. Now, I read a letter. I don't know if you saw the first letter, but actually I wrote a letter talking about balloon payments. This is what is being referred here in that clarification. And what you have is you have 2 bonds. Actually, one was extended out to 2045, but now it's compressed to 2031. And you're ending up with a balloon payment the last 5 years. I already previously sent you my concerns by way of an Excel sheet. And if you looked at it, there was large balloon payments of approximately, and I said this last time, approximately 19 million, going all the way up to 40 million in the last 5 years. Now looking at that, and that's irrefutable, by the way, because of these two bonds that are being refinanced is going to create these large balloon payments at the end. And I say 2 bonds because nobody's really talking about this second bond, which is called the solid waste bond. Mr. Enright did talk about it, but Dakota's only talked about the facility lease bond. But moving along here, we have large balloon payments coming in the last 5 years. Dakota's at the McEnroe hearing last Monday stated that revenue sharing will cover it. Well, I went home and I took a look at his statement. And to tell you the truth, it is totally wrong. Revenue sharing means that, obviously some of the revenue will go towards paying this bond. I can't see that. All I can see is all the revenue going to pay this bond. In my calculations, and I'm not going to profess to be an expert, Mr. Enright or even Mr. Gable, I don't know if he's here. But anyway, what it looks like, based on Covanta running the incinerator and maybe 2% profit increase per year for the next 15 to 18 years, what Covanta will have to generate in revenues to pay off this balloon payment and also to make a profit, since it's a private enterprise that obviously deserves a profit, their revenues that they're going to have to generate in, say, 2028 as the average year in the last 5 years, their revenues are going to have to go from 55 million, which was last year, to 245 million. That's almost a multiple of 5 times. In other words, they're going to have to increase their revenue 500%. This is an incinerator. It's got basically a fixed waste stream. It's not a technology company that will be able to create some technology that more and more business will use. It's not Walmart that will open up a lot more stores. It's a fixed asset sitting over in Norway with a fixed waste stream coming to it. In 15 years, to increase the revenues enough to pay for these balloon payments at the end is impossible. To make revenue, to generate revenue that'll be 400 to 500% of what it is today. That is impossible. I've asked these questions. I've asked these questions at the McEnroe hearing as to how this balloon payment is going to be paid. And all I heard was it's revenue sharing. Well, there's some facts now. You're going to have to generate approximately 4 to 5 times what the revenue is today to pay for these balloon payments. This is impossible. It is physically and fiscally impossible to do. The problem here is nobody's looked at this. Mr. Berry has looked at it, I've looked at it. I don't think Dakotas has actually ever thought about somebody actually looking into what they always propose, because they're the main legal firm in the state of New Jersey. Well, here's a couple of little schlub residents that decided to look into this, and what I see, and I'm sure Mr. Berry's going to speak too, but what I see, we got major problems here, and I've asked these questions, and I got no answer at the McEnroe hearing. No answer. That's amazing, because you're supposed to answer the public. So now I'm standing here asking that same question. How are these balloon payments going to be paid? I'd like to see some backup from people, numerical backup. I suggest before you vote, you demand to see numerical backup. Okay, let me move to part two on what my problem is. These refinancing of the bonds. When you refinance these two bonds compared to what the original 1998 to 2023 refinance is going to be, 2012, you're actually going to save $8.8 million. I mean, the balloon payments are at the end. In the beginning, there's actually savings. Now, I can see, yes, there's going to be some savings passed out to the towns, which is great. I mean, you know, that is a good idea. It's nice. However, I'm looking at this $8.8 million, and again, at the McEnroe hearing, I actually questioned who's going to receive this $8.8 million savings from the old bond to the new bond. I have an attachment, and I don't know if I sent it to you, but I was able to track $7 million of that $8.8 million. I thought, okay? This one, Jonathan Williams, did actually address, but the strange part is, he only addressed that of that $8.8 million in savings that should be spread around to whatever entity. He only accounted for $4 million of it, which actually leaves $4.8 million unaccounted for. Now, I'm standing at this hearing, and I sure hope somebody's going to come up and answer what this is, because this $4.8 million is inexplicable. It's untraceable, and it is. And I suggest any of you should not be voting tonight, because there's major questions here that have to be answered. You should see the backup as to how these balloon payments are going to be paid, because increasing revenues by 400 to 500% on a hard industry such as incineration is impossible. Number one, and just number two in summary, tracking what that $8.8 million savings is all about, no one has been able to give me an answer. I suggest you actually find out what that answer is before you even vote. It's untraceable in all the documents, and I've read these documents. In addition, let me just wrap up, because actually in my first letter I sent, and I'll make some corrections, because there were some corrections, and one of them was I questioned Freeholder Sullivan's credentials. Mr. Williams of Dakotas stated that back in '98, Mr. Sullivan and a few other people single-handedly saved Covanta from near bankruptcy, so I appreciate that statement, and at this point I'll retract my question about his credentials. In addition, I also noted that Dakotas was selling us for on the rate relief. However, and I was saying, well, yeah, but Covanta is in dire straits financially. That's an erroneous statement, and he corrected that he did not make that statement. So I apologize for that, and I apologize for questioning the credentials. However, the finances, this is the major problem, is the finances. I would like to hear answers. Are we going to hear answers on this, or is just this a comment period?
A comment period.
Well, I seriously request that you don't do anything tonight, and you really, if anything, sit down with me. I mean, I'll show you. I'll send you the letter. I'll explain my backup before you do it, because you're only hearing from one side. Now this is the other side. This is the ratepayers' side, and we're looking at major problems. Thank you very much for giving me the extra time.
Okay, I'm going to ask Jonathan to come up and address your question. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good evening, Madam Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Jonathan Williams, I'm Special Counsel to the Union County Utilities Authority.
Jonathan, I'm sorry, could you speak up a little bit and talk to me?
Absolutely. I was introducing myself. I'm Jonathan Williams, Special Counsel to the Union County Utilities Authority. With me tonight is Dennis Enright, who's the underwriter for the transaction which we're proposing to approve tonight by way of a plan amendment to the Union County Solid Waste Management Plan. You know, I've heard Mr. Patterson ask these questions before, as he was good enough to point out. He ignores the answers. The last time he brought up the issue about the balloon payments, he failed to mention revenue sharing at all. The plan amendment, along with the revised McEnroe petition, all talk about the revenue sharing formula with Covanta, which we've negotiated for, which was a difficult concession to get them to make because it provides a significant amount of revenue in the last 5 years of the transaction. I'm going to let Mr. Enright address specifically the numbers that are involved in terms of producing sufficient revenue to retire the balloon payments in the last 5 years of the refinanced debt.
The revenue sharing payments which the UCU will be entitled to are based on the gross revenues of the facility, not the net profit of the facility. And they amount to about 37% of the gross revenues of the facility. And they are more than sufficient to pay the balloon that will be remaining at the end. Those revenues are based upon a projection of what they will be growing them at inflation, at 2.7% inflation rate, which has been used consistently since 1998 in predicting the revenues of the facility, and has been accurate. That's both as to electric revenues and as to the disposal fee revenues. Keep in mind that disposal fee revenues already have the CPI formula embedded in them by contract. So, I mean, those revenues are pretty secure. And the electric revenues actually have grown, since 1998, have grown to create a very large revenue stream, which is what brought us to a renegotiation to try to get the public sector to share in that windfall profit that was being made. So those were the basis of the negotiations that led to a structure. Originally, we were going to do a 40-year deal. That didn't happen, so we had to condense it inside of that, and the revenue sharing allowed us to do that. So the county does have some exposure there. There's no question it has some exposure. But the reasonable projections would indicate that you're well covered in terms of making all of those payments in the future years. And keep in mind also, to the extent that there were any shortfalls, at the end of the 20th year in 2031, the entire facility goes back to UCUA, and all of the profits reside in the public sector. So if there were any problem, they could be taken care of with a refinance at that point in time. But it's highly unlikely, but that's the situation. As to the savings on the refundings themselves, if you want to look at the actual economics, did we save money, not save money by refinancing the bonds? The only way to do that fairly is to do what's called a net present value analysis. You take all of the flows and measure them side by side and discount them at the borrowing rate back to today's dollars. In both cases, both the lease revenue bonds, which are related to the plant, and the solid waste system bonds, which are related to flow control, the stranded debt. In both cases, they produce net present value savings in today's market. They're not going to lose money on net present value basis. A couple $1 million each. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me. So I think that's consistent with everything we've shown to you and all the regulatory bodies throughout. As to the untraceable money that the gentleman talks about, I can't follow his logic, so I can't trace the money. I believe what he's done is found that he's allocated money to different parties along the way, and there is an amount left, and that amount left effectively is Covanta's profit in the early years. So I mean, that's really what that money is, best I can understand his question.
I'm going to assume that there may be other questions asked by other speakers. We are here tonight to answer those questions and to provide a complete record for the state in their review of the solid waste plan amendment. I'd also like to remind the board, if I may, that the local finance board has reviewed the economics of this transaction and voted unanimously to approve it at the Department of Community Affairs, as well as the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection did an economic review and asked over 100 multi-part questions analyzing the economics of the transaction, all of which were answered by the UCUA project team and all of which were satisfactory to the state.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this ordinance only?
Yeah, John Burry, Slub resident, Kenilworth. As far as the studies on the bonding and the debt, are pretty much, you know, you could come out with whatever you feel like. I'm sure they did studies in Harrisburg when they were playing around with their incinerator. Harrisburg's probably going to go bankrupt any day now because of the incinerator debt. No, but I'm sure the studies were pretty thorough. Thankfully, we're apparently going to get answers to questions, because I was at the meeting on Monday, McEnroe hearing, and there were 4 questions that weren't answered, so I'll pose them again. What's the gate price for out-of-county haulers? Somebody from New York City, no contract, whatever comes in, what do they pay per ton? What's the lost revenue between 2004 and 2031, a dollar figure, a real dollar figure, of the electricity sales, recyclables that would come back to the public sector? I mean, as it stands now, it looks like it's 17 million electricity, 5 million recyclables. That's a ton of money. Over 7, 8 years it's being given away. But that's my guess. I'd like a real number. And then the total debt, including the landfill bonds. Like, what is it now, and what would it be when, just 2 numbers is fine. What would it be when this goes through? What's the total debt? And the 4th one was the Dakotas and Northwest financial fees to date and what they're expected to get from this. So those questions were, I posed them Monday and they weren't answered, and I have video evidence of the fact. And the other part of this is how this is sold. This is not, I was at that hearing and I was really looking for someone to represent the UCUA and the taxpayers, especially the taxpayers, but there's nobody, and especially Kenilworth. They've been just sold a bill of goods. They signed a contract back in December or October, and in there's a guaranteed tonnage. And they were told that their guaranteed tonnage is 3,000. It's not. It hasn't been that probably since '04. But that is what they will have to pay. Now, in the past, the UCUA has not enforced that because they only needed 250,000 tons according to contract, and they were getting it from other places. But now they need 430,000 tons, and that's the real reason. This is to protect Covanta's profits. And there really should be somebody out there looking to protect Union County taxpayers, not profits, but them. And in the justification to this agreement that was filed in February, it says there's a risk. The increase in annual guaranteed level of waste that UCUA has agreed to deliver from 250 to 430, there's a risk there. But this is how they mitigate that risk. And the first reason, the extended local waste agreements, approximately 175,000 tons annually, require the local municipalities to deliver a guaranteed annual tonnage of waste. In the event that a municipality does not deliver the guaranteed level of waste, the municipality is still required to pay as if that guaranteed level of waste had been delivered. This is what they certified to the government, to the state. This has not been enforced in the past. Kenilworth probably has around 2,600. The last number I have is 2,673 from 2009. In their contract, it says 3,000. They signed it. The UCUA can bill them 3,000, and according to this, it looks like they will bill them 3,000. So that $12 savings, it's gone, and that $12 isn't indexed. As it gets worse and worse and higher, there'll be a massive loss. And as the waste drops, 5 years from now, it's possible that Kenilworth could have 2,000 tons of waste and still be paying for 3,000. That's how it's been going. And this is going to be a surprise to municipalities, unless they listen to the emails I've sent to them. And I am encouraging every municipality to cross out that guaranteed tonnage. They don't have to be robots. They don't have to sign whatever's put in front of them, because what's put in front of them is likely written by Covanta. That guaranteed tonnage has got to be out. It is unconscionable to be sending waste in and having to pay for, it's unconscionable for Kenilworth to have to send 2,600 tons of waste and have to pay for 3,000. If they understand that position, I don't think the town, and the towns weren't told that. I know in Kenilworth, according to the record of the work session 1026, Kenilworth was told that they had 3,000 tons, and nobody investigated there. So there's going to be a major surprise. And another quick thing, that 2002 agreement that Kenilworth signed, the guaranteed tonnage number was blank. So I don't think Covanta can actually, so they needed a new agreement. I don't know if it was only Kenilworth that was blank. It may have been blank for the other ones. But they provided me with that, and there's no number in guaranteed tonnage. So maybe they had to go through this to guarantee Covanta's profits, which is really what this looks like it's about. But if you got the questions, I'd like the 4 questions answered if the answers are available now.
Mr. Berry indicated that he asked those questions at the McEnroe hearing on Monday evening and that they weren't answered. Of course, what he did not bother to tell you is that he was told repeatedly on the record that the record of the McEnroe hearing would remain open for 15 days, that any questions that were not answered that night would be answered in writing and made part of the McEnroe report, and that he could ask any additional questions over that 15-day period and that those would be answered as well. He knows that was said, and he made a tape of it. I just guess he didn't feel like talking about it tonight. Now, having said that, let's talk about what the questions really go to. The guaranteed tonnage figures in the local waste agreements have been there since 1998, and the 13 municipalities that signed in 98, those numbers, those tonnage figures were based on their historical tonnage figures, and those numbers were selected by the municipalities, not by Covanta, not by the UCUA. Those numbers were put into the agreements by the municipalities. And everyone understood at the time that that was a minimum, or what we call a put or pay amount of tonnage that has to be delivered. It was indicated accurately that the UCUA has never had to enforce under deliveries. What isn't mentioned is that historically, since '98, there have been any number of municipalities who over-delivered 125% of that number permissible by contract, and that the UCUA came up with a formula which allows the under-deliveries by some towns to offset over-deliveries by other towns. But some municipalities did end up paying a penalty to the UCUA for over-delivery of waste. And it was controversial, but it was done because the towns had negotiated for and picked the wrong numbers. Under the proposed agreement that we're entering into, we're proposing to put into place, the towns are able to revisit the tonnage figures in order to increase them every 5 years. The municipality that was referred to by Mr. Berry that joined late because they realized they had made a mistake and were losing money with the disposal of their waste and the cost of doing so. That number in the contract, the local waste agreement, when they joined, was not blank. It was a number that they selected. It is not the expectation of the UCUA to have to penalize any municipality for failing to meet its put or pay obligation. The statement that was read with respect to the application to the state for approval, as well as the basis on which we're able to finance solid waste disposal debt, the provision is certainly there for the enforcement of a put or pay agreement. But historically that has never happened. And we believe that the projections that we're showing of 330,000 tons of Union County waste, 330,000 tons of Union County waste is the only obligation in the agreement. And anyone who has read all the documents will be able to tell you that should there be a shortfall on the delivery of that waste, that there's a mitigation obligation on the part of the operator of the facility to bring waste in so that there will be no shortfall payment required of the county. Gate price being charged for out-of-county waste. We are, as I've said many times during the course of this process, we are going back into the business. We are going to market 100,000 tons of out-of-county waste. And we're going to do so with an opportunity to make a profit or a differential on what we pay Covanta to process that waste and what we charge the sending municipality or county. And the state has imposed the requirement that Union County receive 100% of the differential or profit rather than 50%, which was originally proposed. You want to talk about the total debt?
I don't have all the runs in front of me, but I believe these are very close to accurate figures. The current debt outstanding on the lease revenue bonds, I believe, is $126 million. On the system bonds, it's about $67 million. And on landfill bonds, it's about $25 million. The landfill bonds are not being touched. They'll still remain outstanding, same amount. The solid waste system bonds are being refunded. The new debt will be about $69 million. The lease bonds are being refunded. The new debt will be about $134 million. At the hearing the other night, I used a rounded number of $140 million and $70 million, but those are closer to accurate because I did look at them after the fact. And I'd like to just make one comment that, you know, this deal was restructured in 1998 when the county was facing $300 million of debt that they were going to have to take on, and the plant was losing money. And the restructuring of that deal reduced that debt down to under $100 million. That became the stranded debt that, you know, got charged to users of the system. That deal, Covanta came in and put in $200 million to offset that debt. That's where the money came from the $200 million that they put in for their upfront lease payment, if you will. So as a result of that deal, they have the right to run the facility and get the profits or losses that might come from them. Those profits were higher than normal, as I mentioned before, because electric prices were higher. And they were willing to enter negotiations to let the public sector share in them as part of that now, rather than wait till we get the plan back later. And that's what led to the structure that we have today. But I just wanted to remind everybody that's how we kind of got here.
I'd just like to add, if I may, on the question of lost revenue and what are we losing by extending this relationship beyond 2023. When 2023, we would get the facility back, and we would get all of the energy revenue and all the other money that would come in. But it has been said the other night, Monday night, someone stood up and actually said that in 2023, the debt would be paid off. We'd be able to have solid waste disposal for nothing, which just bespeaks a complete lack of ignorance and a complete lack of knowledge and analysis of the situation. Because in 2023, you would get a facility that still has to be operated, the people still have to process the waste, ash still has to be disposed of at landfills, the facility still has to be maintained, all of the things which Covanta does. You know, Covanta somehow throughout this process with some people has become a dirty word. We don't defend Covanta. They have a right to make a profit, and they have a right to the transaction that they negotiated, as Mr. Enright just pointed out, in '98. But we've negotiated to obtain benefits back. We've talked a lot about the $4 million per year that will be distributed to municipalities and to ratepayers in the county. Someone said that the ratepayers are going to be put at a disadvantage by this transaction. Union County ratepayers, since '98, when the facility was about to go under, it wasn't Covanta or Ogden, it was the UCUA, and it was county debt that was about to go into default. We have the lowest, we lowered the rates then down to $50 a ton from much, much higher prices. We have the lowest disposal fees. We're going to continue to have the lowest disposal fees in the region.
Thank you.
Tina Renner Cranford. I want to commend my fellow citizens Bruce Patterson and John Berry for putting so much time and effort into trying to understand what's going on here. This is complicated stuff. Mr. Williams used the word ignorance. He referred to residents as being ignorant. Well, honestly, I am ignorant. This is complicated. And I would bet $1,000 that if we had a chance to poll every freeholder right now and ask you 3 questions about this deal, I would guess that you wouldn't be able to answer it. You know, it's complicated numbers being thrown around. Bruce is writing furiously. I'm watching you. Not one of you are taking a note. Your minds are already made up. And what do council people have but this presentation from your end? The Union County Improvement Authority wants this. This law firm is very connected with the Union County Improvement Authority. And this is the only information that these council people, these extremely busy council people they're way busier than freeholders, they have so much responsibility. How could they ever put the due diligence into absorbing this and making an educated decision? They have to trust you blindly. So I commend Bruce and John for their work. John is a pension actuary, very good with numbers. Bruce is an engineer. I'm more of a word person. I haven't been able to follow it, but I just want to pay them their respects. Citizens owe a debt of gratitude to them. You might not have liked the way they tried, but they tried. It's very extremely time consuming, and they really put a huge effort into it, and they deserve more respect. Dennis Enright had said that he didn't understand Bruce Patterson's question. Bruce wrote it down for me, or he wrote a different question down. I would ask out of respect that Mr. Enright explained that he didn't understand Bruce's question, that you allow Bruce to ask his own question. But if not, I will read it for you, and he can ask it, I guess, later. DeQuoitis said, for balloon payments, Covanta will pay 37% of gross revenues. In 2009 and 2010, operating margin holds steady at 35%. How can they pay 37% if they only make 35% margin? This means no profit at all or a loss. I would appreciate an answer. Thank you.
The operating margin is not what the county is paid off. They're paid off gross revenues, off the dollars, all of the dollars that come in at the top, and not paid off the dollars after operation on the revenue sharing. So it's all the dollars that come in at the top. If Covanta, for whatever reason, suffers a loss, that's Covanta's problem. It's not the county's problem. The county gets it off the top dollars, not the bottom dollars.
Thank you.
Jim Bittner, Cranford, New Jersey. I'd like to first second Tina Rena's remarks about Bruce Patterson and John Berry. They've done an inordinate amount of work on this subject, a subject that I personally don't have the knowledge of or the insight to fully understand. But I'd like to first start about reading a quote in the Union County Directions that came out last Tuesday. It was by the new county manager, Al Fiala. Quote, "I think the role of government is to fill in the gaps where the private sector won't. The foreclosure crisis was caused by a lack of regulation and allowing investment banks to do whatever they wanted. There's an example of how no government oversight led to colossal problems. So far, we've listened to the bonding people, we've listened to the lawyers. We've yet to hear from the Director of Finance on this subject. We've yet to hear a word uttered by the county manager on this subject. We've yet to hear any discussion whatsoever by any of the freeholders on this subject. I think the taxpayers of Union County are owed that respect. What is being proposed here tonight to be voted on is mortgaging the future of the taxpayers of Union County 30 years going forward. It's much like the vote I listened to where the freeholder board unanimously voted to provide the 650 non-union employees and their families free health care for life.
The ordinance, not.
I'm relevant. I believe I am relevant.
You are relevant, and I appreciate if you stick to the subject. Thank you.
I am.
You're not.
I'm saying that we need the discussion, and I'm not hearing it.
I may agree with you on that, but I don't think you have to bring in other issues outside of
Well,
the
the
scope
point
of the
being
ordinance.
is that the analysis was done after the vote, and I would not like to see that happen here on this resolution. I would like to see the Director of Finance here at this podium. I would like to hear the county manager at his position speak about this and refute what these two taxpayers have stood here and said is the facts. And they've done their homework. I have yet to hear a word uttered by any freeholder, Freeholder Carter, Freeholder Estrada, Freeholder Ward, Freeholder Marabella, Freeholder Jala, Freeholder Kowalski, Freeholder Hudak. None of you have spoken a word to either refute these gentlemen and their findings or stand up and say, this is good for Union County. I'd like to hear that from the finance director, the county manager, and the freeholders. Thank you.
I'd like to speak on this subject.
Good evening. My name is Jocelyn Long. I live in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I have a sort of basic question related to 37% revenue share that is guaranteed to the county. As rightfully so, it's not the county's responsibility that Covanta be able to pay that money. However, should Covanta file for bankruptcy or go out of business, what recourse does the county have to recoup the funds that are due to them? That's it.
Under that circumstance, the county would retain ownership of a $300 million resource recovery facility with all of the profits and all of the revenue sharing that would come with it.
Would that be immediately?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close this portion of the meeting and ask for and move ordinance number 725, 2011, and authorize the clerk of the board to advertise same in accordance with the law. May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chairman Mirabella. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Carter. Yes. Freeholder Estrada.
Yes.
Freeholder Hudak.
Aye.
Freeholder Jallo.
Aye.
Freeholder Kowalski.
Yes.
Freeholder Ward. Vice Chairman Mirabella.
Aye.
Chairman Scanlon.
Aye.
8 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. The meeting is now open to the public for the purpose of commenting on resolutions being offered for adoption only. Kindly state your name, town of residence for the record, and adhere to 5-minute time limit. Also, please state which resolution number you're referring to.
The UCUA Covanta deal, two people actually looked into it in depth as residents. That was John Berry and myself. We've been on top of it and going to the meetings and speaking out about it. It is getting now hot and heavy. A lot of the Trenton authorities approved it, and it's going to the freeholders. They approved it. So at this point, it's almost like a done deal. However, us residents are still arguing about it. There's like two major concerns of mine. John has his concerns, but two major concerns of mine is the balloon payment at the end, and also this hidden money that is on the refinancing that is disappearing. What it is they refinance, so there's this $8 million savings between the new bonds versus the old payments. So I've been pressing, where is this $8 million going?
Dakotas talks about $4 million of it. He won't talk about the other $4 million. He talks about just $4 million, how it's being spread around. $2 million to the county, $1.5 million to the towns, et cetera, et cetera. But he won't admit anything about $4 million. They finally did answer the questions, because I got up there and I said, I want answers, I want answers. Well, Dennis Enright, who's from NW Financial, he's in the bond aspect of this issue, and he didn't actually answer it, but what he did say was, well, if a resident's wondering where the $4 million is going, it's probably the profits that Covanta makes. Which really sounds terrible, because what they're doing is, are they giving Covanta another $4 million out of the savings just as profits? And the question then would be, why? Why the hell is that? That should go back in tipping fees to the towns, but I don't know. He was kind of like just kind of swishing his hand around and dismissing it. Another thing, back to these balloon payments, Dakotas was trying to justify and saying that Covanta, they negotiated Covanta at the end of the 5 years with the balloon payments is going to be giving 37% of the gross revenues, right off the top, 37% to the county. That makes no sense at all, because looking at the financials of Covanta for the last 2 years, basically their operating margins are only 35%. So if their operating margins are only 35%, why would they think about giving 37% away? That means they make no profit and they're actually going to lose money. It doesn't make any sense. Another interesting aspect was when Dakotas talked about it. I was up there. It wasn't at this. It was at the McEnroe hearing on Monday, which was at UCUA. But I talked about what happens if you don't sign the contract, the original contract, and the original contract runs out in 2023 at the incinerator. And the towns that don't sign, and actually Dakotas did agree, the towns that don't sign are then through with whatever debt it was. Their tipping fees will drop, and they'll only be paying the operational expense. And in my speaking at the UCUA McEnroe hearing, I actually said, well, then it'll, the tipping fees will actually go near to zero. And that's when at the freeholder meeting tonight, Dakotas says, there's some residents here that are very ignorant, or I don't remember the exact terms, but he was calling me ignorant because I said it will be near zero. Where yes, the operating costs are going to come involved, but the tipping fees as a guest, which right now are $55, 15 years down the line, instead of probably the $100 to $200 that the towns that are signing the contract will have to be paying, the ones that don't sign the contract will probably have a tipping fee of $20, $30, and this is 15 years from now, because operational costs, yes, they'll be there, and yes, all the towns will have to pay. So, but I mean, he's calling me ignorant. To tell you the truth, this is the first time probably residents are questioning Dakotas and Enright's financials, all their backup. They didn't even show any backup. All they said is, oh yes, we have backup and it proves this and it proves that. And they throw out 37% gross margin, 37% of the gross revenues are going to cover it when operating expenses only 35%. Makes no sense at all. I mean, the freeholders are going to vote yes, guaranteed, because they're all bobbleheads. My word. Angel Estrada said that, he's the liaison now, and he said he's read everything, and he's going to go along with the experts. This is in the wrap-up comments. And Mirabella said that.
Your questions then.
Yeah, that's true. Well, he's letting the expert. And actually, Mirabella also said, well, the residents were somewhat meritorious, in their research. And so I guess he actually gives a backhanded compliment to John Berry and myself. But he said, I'm going to have to trust the experts also. And the sad part is, government obviously just depends on other people. They don't think for themselves. On issues that I guess they can't comprehend, they have to depend on the experts. But the question is, do the experts really know? So far, I've had questions with that.
The experts aren't.
Yeah, Dakotas.
They have something to make on it.
Right. Yeah, Dakotas makes money on this. So does Enright. Dakotas strong arms. Has been accused of strong arming government entities by Miss Cooper of the state investigatory arm. I mean, so like, and plus he makes these crazy statements. So contradiction. Here's a contradiction that Dakotas actually said at the McEnroe hearing Monday night. He said that the $2 million that Union County is going to receive in this refinance, which they should not receive anything because they have nothing to do with it, but they're going to get $2 million to balance their budget. He says, well, that $2 million is going to go to the county and it's going to offset any tax increases. So it's going to give a tax reduction to the taxpayers, which in a way does make sense. But then a contradiction comes out later on in this McEnroe hearing when the debt, if something happens to Covanta, what happens to the debt? He says, well, the debt will then default to UCUA and the county government. And yes, the county government is the UCUA. So all the debt goes on the county government. However, that will be no risk on the taxpayers or the residents of the county, only the Union County government. That makes no sense. Yeah, that makes no sense. Where do you think all the money comes from to pay for all this debt? The Union County taxpayers. Dakotas, this is the first time people are actually confronting the guy. That's probably what the problem is. These guys are just running willy-nilly, but the freeholders are going to agree because they trust those experts.
Well, they're getting paid for
yeah, they're getting paid for it.
To be experts.
Union County's getting $2 million out of it, so what are they going to say? No, I'm going to look into the plan because it doesn't make sense. They're going to get $2 million out of it, the mountain budget. That's my comments.
They're not going to look into it because the Union County Improvement Authority is through it and they're pushing it, and we know
Utilities Authority.
Utilities Authority. Well, who's Dakotas with? Isn't he the Improvement
No,
Authority?
Dakotas. Yeah, Dakotas. No, Dakotas represents the Utilities Authority.
He's special counsel to the Utilities Authority.
Oh,
yeah, the Improvement Authority is Charlotte Falls. Well, that's a story in
Well,
itself.
Dakotas is also counsel to the Improvement Authority, and
Go ahead, John,
so
you want to say
he's
something?
getting $1 million a year out of that. That company is.
Yeah, he's making $50,000 a month.
And the fact that they put Freeholder Sullivan in charge of the Utilities Authority in the midst of all this is just really makes it look like.
Well, let me just comment on that. And I wrote a letter to all the towns, and in that letter, I questioned Freeholder Sullivan's credentials, that he should be a director of the UCUA, and that he has minimal experience, except that he was the liaison from the Freeholder Board there.
And you backed off, didn't you?
Tonight I did.
Yeah.
Actually, and Dakotas at the UCO hearing said that Freeholder Sullivan has more experience. He and a group of people back in '98 single-handedly saved Covanta and the incinerator from near bankruptcy, and that he has more experience than anybody else in that room, right?
Most
people combined in that room,
put together,
which was very interesting. Tonight at the Freeholder meeting, I actually said, you know, if that is true, I'll retract my statement that I guess he has credentials.
How do you prove it?
I can't prove it, but at that point,
I don't believe it then.
Okay, but I mean, if that's a fact, then I'll back off my claim, and you know, and I more or less apologized. So
yeah.
I told that to Sullivan, by the way, at the end of the meeting, because he wasn't in that, because he had to step out, you know, because he's the director. So I went up there at the end and I said, by the way, I apologize for that comment about
Such
no
a blessing.
credentials.
He's never apologized to anybody in his life. Why would you apologize to him?
Later on, I'll read you that apology that he gave.
Well,
You want an apology?
If you can mean that's it, then I will apologize to you.
Okay, I'll read you the apology, but I won't tell you right now. Go ahead. What's next?
Well, no, we're just finishing up a couple of points. So you were smoozing with the freeholders while
I
Jim
told
was
him,
waiting
I told him he missed a
downstairs.
compliment. The poor guy missed a compliment from me, you know?
So we'll throw out Hero, waiting for you downstairs.
Anyway, Jonathan Williams did have a good point about Bruce being ignorant. And that goes to everybody in that room. And it's not Bruce's fault necessarily,
Including me, I admit it.
because you don't. The guy is up there to make people
Feel ignorant.
not feel
Well,
it,
look
to
at
know.
it.
I mean, if we're ignorant,
Oh, yeah, right.
We don't have the information. These guys.
right, you're doing everything, and
Full time. That's
whose
his
fault
job.
is it he's
Yeah,
ignorant?
sit back, let me take over, right? That's probably what Dakota said.
Bruce sits there, he's willing to listen, or whatever, wise him up. I mean, the fact that Williams could say Bruce is ignorant is his fault. It's like a teacher.
He didn't say my name.
Everybody knows.
The students are stupid because the teacher can't teach.
Right. If the teacher would say, you're ignorant, well, whose fault is that? If the student is out there, coming to class every
backtracked on that a
day,
little
doing homework,
Yeah, right.
it's the
I think he
teacher's
agreed it was
fault.
harsh word to use. He tried to backtrack on that a little bit.
Anyway, that finishes up Covanta, and review the tape. Watch it a few times, the hearing. It'll be a rewarding experience.
Except you're going to be
Okay,
paying
you
in
can
the
turn it
end,
off.
paying big time.